Have you ever made a decision so quickly that you later regretted it for years? What if that single choice affected not just you, but entire generations? This is exactly what happened to the Israelites in one of the Bible's most instructive stories about the dangers of hasty decision-making. It's around 1400 BC, and the Israelites have just conquered Jericho and Ai. Word spreads like wildfire throughout Canaan about this unstoppable force that serves the God of heaven. Terror grips the hearts of kings and common people alike, but while most nations prepare for war, one group chooses a different strategy entirely. The Gibeonites, inhabitants of 4 cities including the major city of Gibeon, devise an elaborate deception. These aren't primitive people, they're sophisticated enough to understand that direct confrontation with Israel means certain destruction. So they craft a plan that would make any modern con artist proud. Picture this scene: a group of men approaches the Israelite camp at Gilgal, their clothes deliberately torn and patched. Their sandals are worn through, their wineskins cracked and mended. They carry moldy bread and present themselves as weary travelers from a distant land. Their performance is Oscar-worthy. "We've come from a far country," they tell Joshua and the leaders. "We've heard about your God's mighty works in Egypt and your victories over the Amorite kings. Our people sent us to make a treaty with you." They point to their provisions as evidence. "Look at our bread, it was warm when we packed it. See our clothes and sandals, they're worn out from the extremely long journey." The deception is brilliant in its simplicity. God had commanded Israel to destroy all the Canaanite peoples, but he had also given them permission to make treaties with distant nations. The Gibeonites are betting everything on this loophole. Here's where the story takes its crucial turn. Joshua 9:14 records the fatal mistake. The Israelites sampled their provisions but did not inquire of the Lord. Think about this: these are the same people who had seen God part the Jordan River just days earlier. They had witnessed the walls of Jericho collapse at God's command. Yet in this moment they trust their own judgment instead of seeking divine guidance. The evidence seems convincing. The moldy bread, the worn-out clothes, the weathered appearance, it all supports the Gibeonite story. The Israelite leaders examine the physical evidence, discuss among themselves, and reach what appears to be a logical conclusion. Within hours, they make a binding oath before God to spare these supposed foreigners. But 3 days later, reality hits like a thunderbolt. The Israelites discover they've been completely fooled. The Gibeonites aren't from a distant land, they're neighbors, living just a few miles away in cities that should have been conquered. The long journey was actually a short trip with clever staging. Joshua confronts the Gibeonites with their deception. Their response reveals their desperation. "We were clearly told how the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you the whole land and to wipe out all its inhabitants from before you. So we feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this." Now Israel faces a dilemma. They've sworn an oath before God, and breaking it would dishonor his name. Even though the treaty was obtained through deception, they must honor their word. Joshua's solution reflects both justice and mercy. The Gibeonites will live, but they'll serve as woodcutters and water carriers for the tabernacle. This decision creates immediate consequences. When 5 Amorite kings attack Gibeon for making peace with Israel, the Israelites are obligated to defend their new servants. This leads to the famous battle where Joshua commands the sun to stand still, demonstrating that even from their mistake, God can bring about his purposes. The spiritual lesson cuts deep into human nature. How often do we rely on our own understanding instead of seeking God's wisdom? The Israelites had access to divine guidance through prayer and the priesthood, yet they chose to trust their senses and reasoning instead. This story speaks directly to our modern tendency toward quick decisions. In our fast-paced world, we often feel pressure to decide immediately. But the Gibeonite deception teaches us that some decisions are too important to make without divine consultation. The consequences of that hasty treaty lasted for centuries. The Gibeonites remained in Israel throughout Old Testament history. The account reminds us that appearances can deceive, that human wisdom has limits, and that seeking God's guidance isn't just religious ritual, it's practical wisdom for navigating life's complexities. Sometimes the most important question isn't what seems right, but what does God say? Make sure you like, subscribe, and share for more weekly videos.